In the previous lecture, we have seen how the chemical potential is defined in terms of internal energy. And as I have told you during that lecture, that in the next lecture we will discuss or define the chemical potential in terms of the remaining three thermodynamic potentials, that is the Helmholtz free energy F, Gibbs free energy H, Gibbs free energy G, and enthalpy H. So today we are going to define the chemical potential or to develop the idea of chemical potential in terms of three thermodynamic potentials, and those thermodynamic potentials are Gibbs potential, Helmholtz free energy, and enthalpy. So let us first start to define the chemical potential in terms of Helmholtz free energy. Remember one thing, as I have given you a rigorous calculation in the first lecture. So in present lecture, following the mathematical steps of the previous lecture, I will shorten some steps as you have already studied it in detail in the first lecture. So we can shorten our calculation in the present lecture. So first of all, chemical potential in terms of Helmholtz free energy F. Number one, chemical potential. Chemical potential in terms of Helmholtz free energy F. Chemical potential in terms of Helmholtz free energy F. I have told you that any thermodynamic potential is a function of three independent variables, three types of independent variables may say. Two are from the set PV, T and S, and another is the number of particles in the system, which we have considered a heterogeneous system. So here, when you talk about the Helmholtz free energy F, this F is a function of F is equal to F of TV N1 N2 so on Ni so on Nn. Remember one thing, as I have told you that which two thermodynamic variables will be here, that depends on the definition of the function. As we have studied under the topic thermodynamic potential, that dF is given as minus S dt minus P dV. So see here, when T or and V get changed, then F changes. So F must be a function of T and V. So we have considered here the variable T and V, of which F is a function. And this result implies that, let us say this is equation number 1. This result implies that whenever there will be a change in T, V and these different n, then there will be a corresponding change in F. So by the method of partial differentiation, we can find the infinitesimal change in F corresponding to the change in these parameters. So what will be the infinitesimal change in Gibbs free energy F? So this infinitesimal change is given as dF equal to del F by del T at constant V and N dt plus del F by del V at constant T and N dV and plus summation I equal to 1 to N. N is the number of particles, and del F by del Ni at constant T, V and Nj Say this is equation 2. See here, I have just directly written this result. In previous lecture, I have calculated this result in a rigorous manner. Here, in fact, this n represents the total number of particles. This n represents n1, n2, and so on. Now, if we consider that our system is a closed system or an isolated system, in that condition, the number of particles of the system will remain constant, and so that here will be in fact dNi. In that condition, this dNi will be equal to 0, because we are considering an isolated system or a closed system. So in that condition, the number of particles will remain constant, and so this dNi will be equal to 0. So if the system is closed, then each of n, that is Ni, will be constant, and this implies if Ni is constant, then dNi will be what? This will be 0, and so that equation 2 will now become, for an isolated system or closed system, this will be del F by del T at constant Vn dt plus del F by del V at constant T and N dV. This will be our result in case of an isolated or closed system. Again, you have studied in the lecture of thermodynamic potential that how dF is defined. So we know that dF is equal to minus S dt minus P dV, as I have written above to P dV. This equation has already described in the lecture of thermodynamic potential. So we have two equations 3 and 4 defining dF as T and V are independent variables. So the equality of these two equations implies that the coefficients of dt and dv in both equations will be same. So equating the coefficients from three and 4, we may write minus s equal to, compare this, minus s will be equal to del f by del t, del f by del t at constant v and n. And when we will compare the coefficient of dv, see here equation 4 and 3, that then we will get minus p is equal to del f by del v at constant t and n. So this is equation 8. See. Now we introduce a symbol mu I for the partial derivative inside this summation. In equation 2, there is a partial derivative del f by del ni, and we denote this partial derivative by the symbol mu I, which is in fact chemical potential of ith component of our system. So writing mu I for the partial derivative in equation 2, that is mu I is equal to del f by del ni at constant t v nj. Remember one thing, this nj contains all values of n except ni, and this is one of the way to define the chemical potential of ith component. This is defined as del f by del ni. This is the basic definition in terms of f. So when we introduce this symbol mu I for this partial derivative, in that condition we can write the equation 2, sorry, here equation number has been written wrongly. This is in fact equation 4. And this will be equation 5. Now, by the use of equation 4 and equation 5, we can write equation 2. What we can write equation 2? Let us see. Hence, in the light of above results, we can write df is equal to minus s dt minus p dv and plus summation over I 1 to n mu I dni. This is an important result. Say it is P1. Now, as we see in equation 5, that how this mu I is defined. So, equation 5 is the definition of chemical potential in terms of Helmholtz free energy F. And this definition says what? This definition says that chemical potentials are the rate of change of free energy per particle at constant volume and temperature. So, mu I, which is chemical potential, this is defined as how? This is rate of change of free energy. Free energy means Helmholtz free energy per particle. Per particle at constant temperature and volume. So you have seen that the calculation is same as that in case of chemical potential in terms of U. There is no difference in different steps. Only the parameter changes. Instead of U, there is F, but the main facts, the main thing remains same. Now we will define chemical potential in terms of the remaining two thermodynamic potential, that is enthalpy and Gibbs function G. I am in fact making the calculation very short because we have not developed the idea regarding the chemical potential. So now number 2, chemical potential in terms of enthalpy H and Gibbs function G. Gibbs function G. First of all, consider the case of enthalpy to define the chemical potential. In this case, say it is number 1, that is in terms of enthalpy. In fact, enthalpy H is a function of entropy S, pressure P, and the number of particles, as you have seen from very beginning. This is Ni to Nn. I have written the equation number last 5, so say this is equation number 6. This is equation 6. Now, following the same steps as we have followed in the mathematical calculation of chemical potential previously, we will find what will be the infinitesimal change in H. So, in the light of above calculations, I am not repeating the same fact, so I am just directly writing the result. So in the light of above calculations, we get what we will get. We get that dH is equal to TdS plus VdP plus summation over I1 to N mu I dNi. Say this is equation C1, where here we have written mu I for what? Here mu I have been written for del H by del Ni at constant S, P and energy. This is C2. In fact, this is the defining equation of chemical potential in terms of enthalpy. You see that definition is same. You may say that the rate of change of enthalpy with respect to the number of particles at constant entropy and pressure is chemical potential. So one thing you must have noticed, that only the parameter U has been changed to H or F has been changed to H, and there is no other any difference. Now, in terms of Gibbs potential, the concept will be same. So, in terms of Gibbs function, this Gibbs function denoted by G is actually a function of T, P, N1, N2, so on, Ni, so on, Nn. and say this is equation number 7. Making the calculation in similar manner, what result will be found in this case? So I am just writing we can find dg will be equal to minus sdt. Remember, I am not doing the mathematics. You may try yourself. Plus v dp plus summation over I 1 to n mu I dni. Say this is equation d1, and here again mu I is equal to what? Mu I is equal to del g by del ni at constant T, P and Nj. This is equation D2. Nj. So, what we see from these calculations, comparing the results from first lecture to this second lecture regarding the chemical potential, we conclude that, conclusion is what? We conclude that chemical potential mu I, this mu I is equal to del U by del Ni at constant SVNj. Again, this is equal to del F by del Ni at constant TVNj, and this is equal to del H by del Ni at constant SPNj, and this equals del G by del Ni at constant TPNj. This is the most remarkable result. You see that definition of chemical potential does not alter, but only the parameter changes. We can define this chemical potential in terms of any thermodynamic potential. So, chemical potential of any component in the system can be obtained by differentiating any of the thermodynamic functions, that is U, F, G and H, with respect to the corresponding number of particles, keeping other thermodynamic variables fixed. But one thing which is very important, or you may say of very practical importance, among these definitions, the definition of chemical potential, particularly in terms of the Gibbs potential, is the most important. So, Most important result or definition is in terms of Gibbs potential. Most important. In fact, this definition will have a wide range of applications which we will see in forthcoming lectures. So the most important definition is mu I is equal to del G by del Ni at constant T P N G. This is in fact the most important definition. One thing more we should note here that the Gibbs potential G is a homogeneous function of first order. So if we use Euler's theorem, then we can express G in terms of mu. G in terms of mu. You may say as G is homogeneous function of first order, as G is homogeneous function of first order. So we have using Euler's theorem, G is equal to summation over I Ni del G del Ni, and this will be in fact this del G del Ni is mu I, so this is summation over I mu I Ni. You will see that this result we will use when we will discuss the equilibrium condition for the phase change. So this is an important equation, say B, and we must remember it. One thing more I would like to convince you that when our system is in some external field and in that external field our system is in equilibrium, what will be the condition for equilibrium of the system in an external field? For a system in an external field, for equilibrium, for such a system, for equilibrium, two things must be constant. In fact, temperature of each species should be constant, that is Ti equal to constant, and this implies dTi must be 0, and at the same time chemical potential of each species should be constant for equilibrium, and this implies d mu I will be equal to 0. So these are the conditions for a system in external field for equilibrium. And this is all about the chemical potential. Now in the next lecture we will discuss the phase transition. First of all, we will discuss some introductory fact regarding the phase transition, and then the actual topic will be started. So this is all for today.